saw that, the science of the day was not really looking at true science, like of contagiousness, for instance, and how Koch's postulates some time ago scientifically are there for you or I or anyone to be able to have a scientific method, which you first have to have some disease, and you have to find some isolate that you only can find in this disease, and you have to be able to introduce it into an organism. It has to be able to create that condition, and then you have to be able to isolate the substance again, and those are things which are not followed at all at this moment, but should be, of course. And, we live in an age where you've just got these small sound bites, really, and captors of consciousness where logarithm is occupied and taken over, and you and I maybe never really have had proper speech, because you and I, we have to have a substance behind things to have a society that could work, So revolution, like the cell is not the original building block of your body, but a colloid of life, and life colloid is. And that symbiosis, which is mutual lived assistance, describes what's going on in nature more than Darwin does. Darwin doesn't really describe anything, and certainly Mendel doesn't either, because it's wrong that there's an idea, apparently everybody has, that the cells of your body arrived through mitotic cell division, which they didn't do. They arrived through a process of aggregation, fusion, and differentiation. And if somebody wants to look more into this, they could look into Secrets of an Alkaline Body, Colloidal Biology and the Secrets of an Alkaline Body, and they could look into Jubb's cell rejuvenation, learn a little bit more about this. But the fact is that mostly at this moment, science wrongfully has thought that this life that we're talking about, that's below the level of a cell, which is spores and double spore building blocks, is what makes up all the organelle interior of your cell. So you've got quite a few organelles in a symbiotic relation living inside a membrane, which each of these organisms can be found individually in nature. And you can find them in a cell. You can find mitochondria, and you can find plastid in plant, which is similar. Botany and biology have some similarities. Only difference is that in biology, what's an animal moves on to a bastula phase in the embryological development, where plant doesn't. But, we have mitochondria, which are energy generators, and these are life colloid made up out of double spore. And so you can have 1,500 of these double spores across, and that can make up about the width, shoulder to shoulder, of a red blood corpuscle, just to give you a dimension. Those red blood corpuscles are made up out of double spore and doesn't have any DNA in it, but if it's in an environment where a morphogenic field exists for it, it can transpose itself into everything that's needed at the site of injury or repair or maintenance or things. And so everything comes from a red blood corpuscle originally, and a cell isn't the original building block of our body. And so this is the useful definition of a spore, because where anybody would have done some test and found spores, none of them could say that it wasn't part of the connected tissue of where it came from, and that it was the breakdown material of what was there, not anything that was attacking anything whatsoever. So symbiosis is a mutual lived assistance, and this describes how everyone is more of a involuted condition, which a nautilus shell is an involuted shape. So you could learn more about what that is in math, but evoluted doesn't exist, and it's not supported at all by math. but an involuted state does. One thing you could say is that blood is a liquid crystal organ, and it's made up out of gases. So protein in the blood, just like your body, is made out of gas and water, and can be broken down into gas and water. Carbon can be breathed off, and that's the reason why most of us we're all carbon-based, because as you respire, you can breathe off everything, and your lungs are the primary organs which are involved in blood. And so the lungs are the primary organs of digestion, and long before the heart was formed embryologically, blood is flowing. So the heart isn't a pump like people think. Blood is not formed in the bones as people have thought, but formed in the intestine and in the lung, and from adipose tissue when it's being broken down, it can be reverse differentiated back into a red blood corpuscle. So a red blood corpuscle isn't got any DNA in it, but can become an immune cell, that where that red blood corpuscle was stagnated or magnetically connected to endothelial cell that was slightly positively charged, it sticks there, and eventually the double spore start to aggregate and tremble, and the membrane starts to bud and sporulate, and the double spore all aggregate, fuse, and can differentiate into what's needed. So that could be an immune cell, as I'm pointing out, or anything that's as tissue needed. And that, this is what was discovered like in the late 70s. So a long time has passed, and that's still so. But it's interesting because you couldn't really find my books too much ever in the bookstores and stuff, and everybody who had a bookstore, the bigger ones, had an order not to restock if anybody got it in. So, some works and people, their works have certainly been, you're living in a world where nothing is verified, so that's not a good thing per se, and everything you see is not independent, so that's not too good. And where you've got a concentration of media, that's a problem, because you really only can have a proper informed consent, that the public have a media that works for the public and not some service provider far away, which is ridiculous, you see. Yeah. But so nobody could jumpstart anything, basically, really, by this idea of contagion, which a long time ago, first it was pox because the English were at war with the Poles and everybody was a pox that was invisible. Then it went to Germany, and then they said it was Germans. Then it went to viruses, and that was a Spanish flu. And then they stuck with the flu idea, and that went around the world a bit, kind of, and everybody who was an enemy in some way of each other, apparently, but not, in a Cold War, just, it's a ruse. There is no such thing as anything like that in any fixed form. It's a pleomorphic state, and fixed monomorphism doesn't exist in biology, meaning that you can find something isolated by itself. You can't. That's impossible. And water is not ecological in your blood. Nothing except what's passed through a membrane is ecological to be in your body. And the state, of course, always was separated forever and a day from yours or my choice in our health. And certainly in religion as well. So it's quite stupid that you would put a corpse above the living, which that's pretty ridiculous. And have all sorts of setups where things are so controlled out external and what have you, that you've got a meme just going on everywhere, and I think that the world needs a bright light, and you need to be able to talk about a resolution, and we need to talk about what's innovative and not yesterday's solution with the things that we do.